Good day. I'm going to talk to you about aliens probing humans. So, extraterrestrials do probe humans from time to time. It's usually non intrusive and it's done in a way that we're mostly not aware of what they're doing. So, I believe pretty well every intelligent being on this planet has been probed at least once. They are looking for some sort of information, but they don't stick anything in our butts, or they don't physically abduct us, at least for the most part. I'm sure somebody has been physically abducted, but usually they are reading charges in our brain or connections in our brain remotely, and they only change the connections if they have to. And I'll get to that later. But I've been probed about 5 times in a way that I was aware of the process, similar to what Robert Monroe describes in his first book, I believe. And what happens is you get this very powerful beam of light encompass your head while you're in sleep paralysis or in a lucid dream, and they seem to be poking around in every bit of your brain. So they tend to do this while we're in REM sleep, because we're not moving in REM sleep, and also our awareness is on intense dreams, so we're often not aware of what's going on. But for those of us who are into altered states of consciousness, we are sometimes in a lucid dream in REM stage sleep, or we are in sleep paralysis, or are about to use REM stage sleep or waking into sleep paralysis. And this sometimes makes us aware of the probing process, and we can actually feel them poking around in our brain. And this has happened about 5 times to me. And the first couple times it's pretty terrifying, but the third time and the times after that, it wasn't such a big deal. I was more interested in what it was doing. So at first you're kind of feeling like your privacy has been invaded, but once you start to learn about these beings, you'll come to understand that they're so advanced that they're all interconnected, either through telepathy or the way that they seamlessly integrate with their technology, or both. And they don't really have private physical data or private physical information. It's all open source and public to them. So when they read your brain, it's not something impersonal to them. It's just physical matter, and they have control over all of it. You don't need to get angry with them or judge them. I mean, I can see where they're coming from, especially if they're looking for technology that we have in our possession as a human civilization that we should not. If they're looking for, an organism, an actual being that is part of the civilization that may have been abducted by us humans, like Area 51, for instance. They might have an alien in there somewhere that they have abducted and are, basically having held prisoner. To see them as the bad race of beings in opposed to us is kind of a single-minded thing, because we are not that great of a civilization. We're pretty primitive, and because of that, we do a lot of stupid things. So I can imagine why they're looking for these particular things. And I've gathered that they're looking for something of theirs that is on Earth's surface that we have been trying to hide from them. We're doing something that we're not supposed to. That's what I've gathered from my communication with these probing beings. They try very hard to keep what they're doing secret. Everything that you learn from them, if you were to ask them questions or anything like that, because they have this link between your brain and their technology or whatever, or maybe their telepathy abilities. There's a link between you and them, and if you ask them questions and download something to your brain, they clear the charges. That's the only time they're going to clear charges in your brain, is if you learn something about them. So what I did, this is rather clever. I was in sleep paralysis, and I think the last time I was probed, I decided to get out of body and ask it questions. I went up to a ship and started asking it questions. So what happens is you follow this beam up to outer space, and this last time, this particular ship was just outside of Earth's atmosphere, and it seemed to be about 5 to 10 feet in diameter. The ship itself, it was almost spherical, and it's really small. I couldn't see it visually. I was just kind of looking at it from a distance. I could only detect its mass and its radiation. It was cloaked, or it was in some sort of pocket universe or warp in space, so I couldn't visually see it, but I knew it was there. I could detect it. It was a very foreign matter Like, it felt really weird. And I really wanted to see what was in it, to see what it looks like. So I traveled inside of this ship, and what I saw was a bit disturbing. So there was what seemed to be a head without a face that was seamlessly integrated with its technology, like it was hooked up in every which way to this ship. They were symbiotic. You could not separate them without the ship malfunctioning and the head dying. So they've basically articulated this particular organism to link seamlessly with this ship. And that's rather sinister, assuming they cannot swap bodies. So if they can't swap bodies, that means that an awareness is automatically coupled to this body when it's grown far enough. And that awareness is trapped within this organism that is bound to this mechanical ship until it dies. But I do believe it is a possibility that advanced civilizations are able to swap bodies. They are basically developing organisms where they can swap their immaterial aspects between them. I recently gathered this idea from one of Robert Monroe's books. And his theory is that humans will eventually develop organisms or develop their subtle bodies in a way or something like that, where we can swap awareness between them or consciousness between them and control different bodies. And I think that's definitely a possibility, especially with these particular extraterrestrials that have no problem traveling between solar systems with 5 to 10 feet large ships. But back to what I was doing, I went into the ship, I observed all this mechanical stuff that didn't make sense to me, and this head that was really weird looking, and I started asking it questions like I did before. Except when you learn things astrally, you get information that goes to the physical body and then information that goes to the next body up in the body chain, or a collective consciousness of some sort. So what I did was I learned a bit about it through astral projection, and it cleared the appropriate charges in my brain, thinking that I was unable to gain any information about it effectively. But what I did was, the next time I was able to astral project, I extracted the information from the next body up, or the collective consciousness, and re-downloaded it to my physical body. And this is a particular thing that is hard to explain, but information is not just in our physical brain. The information that we have beyond our physical brain is ours, and no matter how advanced an extraterrestrial is, they cannot change or manipulate this information. So these are physically advanced beings, but spiritually and beyond physically, like immaterial, they're not necessarily advanced, and they're not aware of this particular form of information. I was able to download a very small amount of information from this being. I was like continuously asking it what it was looking for. It's like I said before, they're looking for something that was part of their civilization that has now been pretty well abducted by our civilization and hidden away from them. So they do have the capabilities to basically reset all the connections in our brain. They can shut off our brain if they want to, if it seems necessary to them. So I don't recommend, trying to be aggressive towards them or anything like that. For the most part, they're just reading things. They're not going to write to our brains. Remember, they have full access to our brains and any kind of physical matter. That's how advanced they are. So it's not like private to them or impersonal. And it takes about 5 minutes for them to probe an entire brain, like get all the information from it. But it does kind of depend on how much knowledge you have. I don't think that you can keep yourself from being probed by putting anything like tinfoil on your head. The technology that they use is either a cross between physical and astral technology, or it's a physical technology that is beyond our comprehension at the moment. I don't think it's going to affect anything within the electromagnetic spectrum. Otherwise, we would detect it. I think it happens at least once a minute at any given time. Probably a lot more than that. They can probe pretty efficiently. I asked them what they were looking for, like I can actually give them the appropriate information or direct them towards the appropriate information if they were just to ask me astrally or ask me in general, like while I was in my dream, in a lucid dream, and they were not interested in that at all. They insisted on probing my entire brain. They don't really respond to what you're saying, even if you communicate correctly with them. A lot of times they are aware, well, they seem to be all aware of your language, so you can speak English to them if you want to, especially if you're not out in your astral body and you're just sitting in your brain in a lucid dream. Yeah, they do know our languages. They could probably learn something like English in like 10 minutes or something ridiculous like that, so you can communicate with them in that way, but they're still going to probe your brain. And they won't really stop even if you ask them to, or say that you don't really have any information for them. And that's it for this video. See you later.